the 24th day of August 2023. I'm going to be your host tonight, Dana at Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. And you can call in at 709-589-4406. We're going to go all the way back to 2018 tonight and just switch gears. We got a poll tonight for everybody. Should Japan dump 1,000 tanks and 30 million one-ton bags of radiation into a mine shaft / borehole? Is that stupid or something? I don't know. Let's talk about it anyway. So I'm going to cover January of 2018 because they took down my other YouTube channel with 1,600 of these presentations on it, and we kind of got to start somewhere, right? So it's an early show tonight. I got to go to the city again tomorrow. We still got problems with transfer case, and we believe it's the shifter. My shifter doesn't fit it properly. You know, that shifts it in the four-wheel, and it's a mechanical shifter. You're just dialing a knob electronically, and it doesn't fit proper. And so the one with the new transfer case didn't come with it for some reason. Hopefully, I don't imagine they got rid of it. It's a rare thing to sell one of those, right? So they got that sitting there. Everything's computerized, so I should be able to go pick that up, come back, and just swap out and put that one on it because mine don't fit proper. But anyway, it's stuck in low 4, so we'll figure it out. Protesters and ex-candidate, and this, I'm not sure what year this story was. It could have been 2018. It wasn't in that particular pile, but I decided to throw it in there at the start because this is really important, this particular story. This is probably one of the most important stories out there when it comes to nuclear. So a so-called protester, an ex-candidate, to plead guilty to seeking nuclear material but won't get a prison sentence under the deal. I was like, what the hell could this be? It was an extraordinary story. So a noted Madison protester, former congressional candidate, was arrested last year after the FBI said he caught him trying to buy radioactive material online, allegedly to kill someone. He'll plead guilty to one of the charges against him. Would not serve any time in prison under a plea deal. I was like, what the hell is going on? And they've been dying for someone to demonize, and he's perfect, and now they're not going to. Turns out it's extraordinary. So he was originally charged with attempting to possess radioactive material with intent to cause death or seriously bodily injuries, a dirty bomb, essentially a nuclear terrorism charge. After being on the dark web and ordering it in polonium, which is inaccessible apparently to the government, was trying to get it to kill himself and make it appear that he was killed by the government using a substance that was difficult for anyone but the government to get. Genius, right? But his two lawyers filed a series of motions to dismiss the indictment, asserting that the nuclear terrorism charge under which he was charged is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional because Congress lacks the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radioactive substances. Only the Nuclear Regulatory Agency has the authority, and they're not going to be doing it any time in the next 30,000 years. So there's no law against poisoning you, see? There's no law against poisoning you. Hi, everybody.
So we saw some big changes proposed today to the fish.
So, building blocks of sea life in rapid decline, and the cause allegedly is unknown. And so, in January 2018, we also done a lot of marine stories. We'll be trying to run through that. And so this is actually really interesting, because right now we've been covering the tanks for 6 weeks straight, hardcore, 2 or 3 hours a night, right? Nuclear plant closures continue to December the 17th, 2018. So sorry, this will be mostly 2019, this January. This was stuff I didn't cover at the end of the year. Meltdown of one reactor at 3 Mile Island led to the beginning of the end of the U.S. nuclear industry. So, yeah, so 3 Mile Island was the end of the nuclear renaissance. It was also when they mandated you had to have sirens, appropriate amount of sirens within 10 miles of a nuclear disease factory we call nuclear power plants. And so I don't remember these stories. This is 2018. We usually cover about 100 of these clicks, 100,000 clicks a year or so. Not counting the stuff that I import, but just stuff I aggregate each day during the year. Insects are being considered to be highly resistant to radiation, but they're not. They're highly vulnerable to radiation. And they're the first things will disappear, because they're at the bottom of the food chain. They're the quickest to get sterilized by the full body x-rays from the massive fallout, right? So remember this story, the end of 2018. Fukushima prosecutor demanded TEPCO executives get 5 years for the negligence that led to a nuclear meltdown. Flash ahead to today, 2023, and there is no meltdown. Only 2.2 grams got out, and it's just tritium. And it's a rare look at Reactor 6, isn't it? And 5. And so Reactor 6 has an addition to it. We don't know what it is right there. No one knows what that is. But remember, those pictures were redacted 2 years ago in the lot, the 736 lot that got released from drones, which probably looks like this one too, by the way. And they were very high quality, but when you zoomed in on them, Reactor 6 was pixelated, so was the exhaust for the fuel pool right alongside of it. And 1, 2, 3, 4 reactors were redacted, and so was the common spent fuel pool, which was behind Reactor 4. So here they were, 2000 or the beginning of 2019, calling for executive to go to jail for meltdowns. 2023, what meltdowns? They pleaded not guilty to the charges. I just wanted to get another boo at these pictures that they had on their site, because we go through so much information each year. So they don't have the roof, the fake cover on Reactor 3. Look at that. And you can see the fake cover on Reactor 4 in that particular picture. We're not going to try to cover everything, because you're talking about, I can't read 1,900, almost 2,000 of these depictions in a show. So I'll blast through some and we'll read others. Public prosecutor chose not to seek indictment against TEPCO, but an independent panel pushed for a trial. About 4.5 million payout was split among 3,800 victims who lost everything. They split which is equal to $1,180 each. So 3,800 victims, TEPCO gave them $1,100, almost $1,200 each. Way to go, TEPCO! You're so great. And this is where they're faking being in the Reactor 4 fuel pool. Vicious, eh? No, everything's perfect. What meltdown? That part hasn't changed. For the first time, right whale calf, which is not that far from where we're on to, well, in 1,000 kilometers away, but an estimated 411 members left, and they revised that number as like 360 or something. But they're in the St. Lawrence. Traditionally, they should be in the Bay of Fundy, but they're not. They're in the St. Lawrence, and they allegedly don't know why. Well, basically, they don't change their nursery. They've been doing this millenniums. They want to blame it on fishing gear and boat strikes, but there's only been 1,200 plus recorded since 1978. And there was around 10,000 grey whales died in the last 5 years. And they're trying to blame that, of course, on ship strikes. The whole industry is crazy. So there was 12 whales died that year in 2017, and another 5 in U.S. waters. Building blocks of the sea life in rapid decline. And we were studying that, and we've been studying that for a decade. We have 6 trips to Alaska punched in, and 4 to 5 months each year on the ocean. The drop in phytoplankton, zooplankton off the coast where I'm currently too. Right, the water's crystal clear, and so it's still that way. And so during this part of the year, there should be all the sperm from the hosey eggs, the sea urchins, the mussels, the starfish, the scallops, and everything else, right? And the codfish and rockfish and all the other species. And then there should be this incredible, well, there should be 1 billion creatures per glass of water. We're not going to go way down the rabbit hole, unfortunately, tonight. And so they quote the World Trade Organization, which is United Nations. How can anybody, why is everybody using the subsidy companies of a military-industrial complex for? Let's keep rolling. Ministry to lobby for trade bloc support. South Korea or Taiwan? Hang on. Because the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership is Japan. So why would anybody want to trade with a degenerate country like Japan, a piece of shit country like Japan for? Canada. Because the last thing you want to import is anything from Japan, particularly food. It should be 100% criminal to allow that into your country. Who knows? Let's keep rolling here. It's going to be hard for me to remember a lot of context. So this study, there's this an email from TEPCO, because we've covered tens of thousands of them over the years. Oh, so that's what this is. This is March the 13th, 2011. NISA announced there's a hydrogen explosion at Unit 3. Well, I'll show you a picture of Unit 3. This wasn't a hydrogen explosion. The hydrogen, by the way, is caused by the nuclear meltdown itself. And so this is the stump of Reactor 4, as I like to call the Ghost Reactor 4 and the Ghost Reactor 3. So they call it a hydrogen explosion instead of a nuclear meltdown, and they call the exclusion zone the no-go zone or an exclusion zone when it's actually just a normal, everyday nuclear wasteland, because the nuclear industry has been having their way with the planet for 80 years, right? And so it's the same as that of Unit 1 and Unit 2. So Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4 detonated and the boat lost her fuel pools. And I'm not going to go through the emails in great detail because we got too much to get through. So we're just going to look at this absurd difference between the media we've been covering this year and what we were covering in 2019. This is just I'm not sure why I got that, and I got a lot of it there. We'll just flash through it. I'm not going to be trying to remember why I put all this there all those years ago. Oh, this was there was around 4 million emails released, and this was a part of it. We got to get that link back up on the site, right? 2028 Tokyo Olympic torches to use recycled aluminum from Fukushima meltdown. Maniacs, eh? Energy Group put a major projects in Taiwan on hold because it failed to sign a power purchase agreement for 2 offshore wind farms. Nuclear industry in Taiwan is vicious, isn't it? Russian-built reactor in Finland delayed again and again and again and again. The same for France's EDF. Bringing sake culture to the Philippines. So what they done was they got billions of pounds of rice they can't sell, so they converted it to sake. Because they won't take the rice, but they'll take the sake. Some serious evil stuff right there. And so they've been jacking, what the Fukushima prefecture done in Japan was they actually opened sake shops. The government of Fukushima prefecture, the nuclear wasteland itself, opened sake shops in New York City, right? We covered that extensively. Orca blows bubbles at a surprise knee border in rare encounter. Yeah, not sure what that was all about, what the context was, because that's quite a few years ago. Let's keep rolling. We're not going to get through. Look at that, blowing bubbles at him. So I'm not sure what that's about. Is that a predatory thing? Dead whale in Yarmouth County Beach being examined. That one's emaciated. The mink whale, she said she saw no signs of injuries, means the animal was probably sick before he died. Well, we've been covering these die-offs for a decade plus. 11-foot toothed creature washes up on the Hinton Head beach. Had likely been dead for around 3 weeks. She said she saw no signs of injuries, meaning the animal was probably sick before he died. That's the theme in 2018-19. They usually feed on squid, octopi, fish, crabs, and shrimp. All the things that were wiped out by... Well, that's emaciated. Last week, a live 50-foot North Atlantic right whale was spotted off the coast. Dead and sick seals, more than 400 dead or sick or stranded, aka dying. Seals have been reported on the Maine coast so far the year. What was the date on this? I'm not sure. They responded to 100 dead seals in that week. The numbers keep rising and rising. Concerns that healthy animals in recovery could be exposed to whatever is causing the die-off. They had to kill 3 of the seals in the last few days. Well, the trend, and you can't tell because it's been dead for a while, but the trend has been starvation. No obvious reason for so many animals suddenly dying or becoming ill. Notice I did not mention the silly coronavirus narrative. Coronavirus. Avian flu. The state reported clear water quality readings and the dead animals don't seem malnourished. Every time I see that, and they do that quite a bit, I notice. Well, it wasn't malnourished, it wasn't aka emaciated, like the rest of them usually are. So we used to get 1, 2, or 3 a season. Most of the ones we used to see were shot or injured and had their heads missing. But these are whole seals. And then the die-offs recently in Peru of 4,500 sea lions, they were trying to blame on the avian influenza, were all like the worst emaciation I've ever seen. So it's considered an unusual mortality event. Decades of chemical pollution suspected in marine seal die-off. Sorry about that. That was kind of rude of you, Dana. I know, right? Usually they don't show up in this, but bear with me, I turned that crap down. Oh, that's where he was being circled by the orca, was blowing bubbles at him. Look at that. I was diving. I used to be a commercial diver, and I went to step, and he's by himself is the scary part, so he's considered a rogue whale. And I went to step off the boat one time, and here was this killer whale. I was on like my 5th or 6th tank of air that day. And we were picking sea urchins at 90 feet in the Fukushima Strait in British Columbia. And so when I went to step off the boat, he was right there in front of me. And so normally the boat is going clockwise. It'll make a half a circle. And so when you step off it, you don't get ran over if there's strong winds or tides, right? And just as I went to step off, you can see there the whales are making waves to wash the seal off the rock. See the killer whales? And so there's a seal on that, not rock, but... So they're making waves to try to knock... And I guess most of them, that's how they get them off the ice, is by making waves. And so he's in the water. Look at that. Wow. Now he's back out. They're there. They're not going to give up yet. This is how they get him, apparently. Look, knocked him off again. Wow. Look how fast he gets back up. That's got to be some scary shit. So don't think they can't get you off your wakeboard if you want to. City Council joined nuclear-free group. I kind of remember this story. This was Ireland. And this is 2018. NuScale improved nuclear energy. Now, at that point, they had NuScale for about 15, 16 years. And they still don't have a reactor. They don't have an application into the regulatory agencies to build one. You're talking about 1 million pieces of paper. And their design is only a scaled-down version of the current boiling water reactors. And they're basically the Department of Energy. This is employees from the Department of Energy broke off and started up this company to take advantage of the funds that were located to the destructive nuclear industry. Ancient tsunami almost wiped out civilization in southern China, where they got all kinds of reactors. And so if they had an ancient one there, they can have a present one, right? So China shouldn't be building reactors on the coastline with a legacy like that. And Japan sends lots of them their way too over the time frame. Japan's government plans to export nuclear power technology is floundering. And so we've seen all kinds of false renaissance coming out of this bizarre industry. Projects with Turkey and Britain have both hit snags. Well, you closed down 53 nuclear power plants for a decade, so your employees all went on about their lives, right? They don't have the skill anymore. You got to maintain the construction to keep the skill, because it takes about 4 years to train nuclear construction employees. Both sides of Taiwan Strait needs peace. Taiwan had thousands of students spam the internet, and academics from the universities, from the nuclear industry, spam the internet for years after Fukushima with propaganda. Insect decimation upstages global warming. No. The global warming is radioactive fallout. It's 80 years of emissions pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. Where have all the insects gone? Yes, and that's the right question. And that's so much more important now. And do you remember how insects used to smash on your windscreen? Now, we've been talking about this since 2014. We noticed there were literally nothing on the windshields on the West Coast when we were doing research. And we were doing all kinds of, like when I was up in the 27,000 islands, there was no insects and there was no birds. There was no sounds at nighttime. There was no sounds on the island because we would go in there and leave the camera there and come back hours later and listen to the audio, and there would be nothing. So I used to wash my car all the time. It was covered in insects. Now it's the opposite. Now it stays clean. In 2013, he spotted something alarming. So 2 years after Fukushima, they noticed a major event. So if you still find some species at one or two sites is not considered extinct, though it should be, right? Fukushima's been left out of the equation the entire time. And then the military, like Russia has, United Kingdom has around 20 abandoned nuclear submarines they can't decommission. Russia has around 166 in northern Russia. I can't remember the name of the bay where they just run them up on the beaches and run away. I got no context for these pictures for you, but let's get through them. Might make sense in a minute, who knows? Oh, that's Los Alamos National Laboratory. Massive disease factory. Why are nuclear power plants typically surrounded by farms, right? So, study claiming that the evacuation caused liver problems around the nuclear power plant, multiple meltdowns. And look at all the people that participated in the study. That scares me. But liver problems are notorious, liver cancers and liver issues are a notorious issue with radioactive fallout victims. How disgusting to try to blame it on evacuation, eh? Evacuation is one risk associated with liver dysfunction. No, it's not. But see, they produced a study, and then people who don't know any better, they start regurgitating the same narrative. Claiming nuclear power is critical to clean energy goal is because it hemorrhages radiation from the fuel pools forever. For the last 80 years, all day, every day, the fuel pools are still splitting the same atoms that each reactor core would for 1 million homes, but there's no containment. And the majority of nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. Renewables overtake coal in Germany. Nuclear is not clean or green or carbon-free or too cheap to meter or anything else. Nuclear power advocates ask commissioners for resolution of support. First Energy, which is a small modular reactor chump. The effort is to find ways to keep nuclear power plants working. So then they try to claim, like, first off, all nuclear power plants, particularly these great big ones, need dedicated 2 gas, oil, and coal plants, one of least, or 2 of at least gas, or 2 coal, or a mix, or oil plants dedicated to them. Dishonesty is the only thing they're really good at, right? Australia's liquid natural gas sector leadership may prove brief. Increases in renewable energy from solar and wind has pushed gas fire stations out of the base load status. But you always see, why wouldn't you use storage? There's so many solutions, around 20 different storage solutions. If you hear sirens near this nuclear power plant Tuesday, don't worry, it's just another drill. Because if you have a nuclear event, they're not going to use them. Hope Creek. How many sirens do they got? I wonder, let's see if that's there. Because usually I'm always looking for that. And it doesn't say, does it? I don't see it there. Usually 60 to 160 sirens within 10 miles. Nuclear plant emergency sirens to be tested. Johannesburg suffocates in the shadow of a mine dump, nuclear mine dump. Uranium, right? Rather. More than 200 mounds of earth contaminated with heavy metals, notably uranium, which is one of the worst ones. This month, 22 of my baby pigs died. When the waste comes in contact with the water, oxidation causes extremely dangerous solution to form. The company responsible, like when you look at what EDF has done to Niger for the last 60 years, it caused a civil war for 60 years so they can get cheap uranium for the French reactors. 9 nuclear incidences occurred in Belgium in 2017. In 2016, there was 15 nuclear incidences in Belgium. Burying 3.6 million pounds of nuclear waste at San Onofre State Beach is a terrible idea. The astronomical costs of nuclear subsidies for old reactors, $280 billion. How much geothermal can you build with that, Dana? Well, a megawatt, which will power 1 million homes or more in geothermal, is around $5 million. So it's an astronomical amount of geothermal energy could be built, but doesn't need storage. Brookfield business partners buy Westinghouse because they went bankrupt because of the 2 new reactors they're building in South Carolina that were like 4 times over budget, 9 years behind schedule. Appeals court ruled against Idaho's unconstitutional AG gag law aimed at suppressing journalists. I didn't think you need to suppress journalists, do you? They're suppressing everybody else. Nuclear plant braces for extreme cold. Oh, I thought it could work in everything. Cold weather actions that are triggered anytime the temperature is under 20 degrees. Where China's top leaders will hide to survive a nuclear fallout. They're still down there in that case. And space for a small city and a stable supply of drinking water for 1 million people, for 1 million of the elite inbreeds. The non-regulatory commission has an unusual event at Oyster Creek is now over. Dip in water intake levels likely caused by the blizzard, they say. Like if Exxon or any corporation, it's impossible to believe them. Significant radioactive waste problem at the Trident nuclear base. Significant radioactive waste. They just don't care, eh? There's no law against poisoning you. That was the first headline I showed you. Not the first time the Ministry of Defense has been guilty. And what are you going to do? You're going to put the Ministry of Defense in jail? I see we're getting spammed on the poll again tonight. Should Japan dump 1,000 tanks and 30 million one-ton bags of radiation into a mine shaft / borehole? How is that a bad idea? How could that be a bad idea? Because they got 30 million one-ton bags. So that's, if you take each one-ton bag, that'll only fit in a one-ton pickup truck. And if you bumper to bumper, that's 5 rows of traffic, bumper to bumper, right around the entire planet of one-ton bags. And so what they decided to do was cut it open and grow food in it, because there's nobody paying attention. And there's nobody saying this is wrong. We're about it. Actually, I guess we are it. There's 2 of us, if I have a minute there. EPA wants to list New Mexico Creek Basin as a cleanup priority. Literally, every nuclear dump in America is on the edge of rivers, ponds, and creeks. The basin comprised about 321 square miles of the Rio San Jose drainage basin, which contains numerous legacy uranium mines. Hazardous substances have impacted private drinking water wells and threaten to impact public water supplies. Every facet of nuclear is just scum, isn't it? Pilgrim remains offline amid the post-storm power crunch. Post-storm. Lake Murray, VC Summers Nuclear Station, will conduct separate tests of siren warnings. Let me see if we can get how many. 109 sirens. If you can hear the sirens, you need to move out of there. You're in a nuclear wasteland or hemorrhaging radiation. Decommissioning progress for unique Canadian reactor, unique Canadian disease factory. And they put Chalk River National Laboratory in charge of it. So that means they're just going to pour cement over it and walk away. And everything runs into the Great Lakes eventually. The 3rd biggest lake on the entire planet. That's nuclear. That's what it does for kicks, right? French energy company EDF to replace coal in China. Yeah, it'll take 20 or 30 years. They'll get her built, though. Clock resets for $1 million a day fine against Department of Energy for South Carolina on plutonium removal. So they're trying to, they wanted them, this is why they were building a mixed oxide facility at Savannah River, right? They wanted to take the plutonium, turn it into fuel, which is a mistake. And it's actually illegal in Canada, the United States to do it, but they make exceptions, see? And because South Carolina doesn't even, at that stage didn't have a reactor, I believe, I can't remember. The plutonium, we're talking about a huge amount. And so they decided, this was the nuclear industry done that, to force them to reuse the plutonium. That's what that was all about. So they had 1 metric ton of plutonium. And when the Energy Department failed to meet the deadlines, $1 million daily penalty was instated. So it wasn't about being reasonable, it was about forcing them to turn it into energy. Complex MOX is promised to our state by completing the MOX facility, right? Like I told you. Which I think, if I remember correctly, was the Savannah River site. And that failed, right? Duke Energy to test sirens near the Oconee Nuclear Station. How many sirens they got? They got 65 sirens. If they have a vent, they're never going to use them, right? They were put there for activists after 3 Mile Island, not by the nuclear industry. Experts doubt the lifting of the Japs food ban. Concern linger about imported from nuclear radiation areas. Well, the radiation never goes away. It's still melting down. The curbs and imports, the area country nuclear crisis will not be easily relaxed or lifted. The Chinese consumers won't accept the imports. They'll figure out how to do it to them. That's the only thing they're actually good at, is poisoning us. The disgusting Mineral Council in Australia puts in another bid to overturn Australia's laws prohibiting nuclear power. So this is the Mineral Council. And they want to overturn constitutional laws so they can make a few bucks. And like, the biggest uranium miner there is only making about $500 million a year. A freak atomic accident destroyed a Russian nuclear missile submarine in 1985. I thought they said it couldn't happen. They've had a lot of freak nuclear accidents, I've noticed. That can't happen. No, that can't happen. And so it sinks, and then we've seen the studies where they claim that the submarines, when they hit the ocean floor, won't break down for at least 1,000 years. You got any idea how ludicrous a statement like that actually is? They just say whatever you feel like. It doesn't mean nothing. 2 ex-prime ministers team up on bill to end nuclear power. 2 ex-prime ministers. That was Khan right there on the right. And they were considered traitors, right? We will definitely abolish all nuclear power plants in the near future with support from the majority of the public. And once the bill begins to be discussed in the Diet, citizens will be awakened to face the nuclear issue. Oops, too little too late, unfortunately. Lawmakers seek to force the state to make radioactive waste deposits public. A Memphis lawmaker introduced a bill to require the state environmental regulators to provide the public with information on the amount of low-level radioactive waste deposited in the landfills in Tennessee. No, we're not telling you. Well, why? Because you'll sue us. Because then you'll blame all your children's diseases on us. Because, that's what done it. A Democrat would make clear that certain information cannot be kept from the public unless the Nuclear Regulatory Commission deemed it confidential. Well, like if you dumped it into a landfill, it's not confidential. Who paid for all that? You never created the regulatory agency to cut your throat. You didn't put all these radiation detecting devices so that when you finally had an accident, you turn them all off, because that's what you done. You educated them, you gave them the authority and the monetary to tell you when it happened. You created them to protect you for when it happened. And so when it happened, the first thing you done was cut your throat and your loved ones and your friends and the 8 million species. Information was routinely available until sometime last year. Why the state had removed an agency spokesman cited a 10-year-old law on what the Nuclear Regulatory Commission required to be public. Environmentalists worry Utah regulators will let violators of radioactive waste sites fly under the radar. Well, don't worry, they will do it. You don't have to worry about them doing it. That's what they do. They do it everywhere. We cover it all the time. There is no regulatory agency. There's controlled regulatory agencies, but they're not actual regulatory agencies. They're not. Department of Energy official commended by the president for work at WIP. Commended. Bill to help sick Hanford workers get a new life. So this bill only required you to work anywhere in the last 80 years. If you worked at Hanford for 8 hours and got sick, it doesn't matter. You don't have to prove that it was caused by nuclear. You just got to get sick and you're entitled to a pension or a payout. Because that's how deadly nuclear accidents or nuclear sites actually are. Deep dive into the facts about the INS Erie Heart accident. So the Indians' only operational nuclear ballistic submarine was out of action for 10 months last year due to an accident. I don't remember the story. So this is 2019, I'm covering now in January. Yeah, we're in January. It's time to go nuclear to fight climate change. Ho ho! These people are crazy to suggest that nuclear is climate change. Its invisible plumes cover the entire planet, pulsing the energy at the speed of light every second for millions of years. And it never goes away, and you add a silly amount every day from all the disease factories worldwide because they're hemorrhaging it from the fuel pools, right? Arm raid on nuclear workers' housings raises fear over Brazil's 2 reactors. I don't know why you would build a reactor in Brazil. Like you got to be insane to build something in Brazil with the potential for disasters that nuclear has. After a heavily armed gang raided a secure workers' condominium just a kilometer away and blew up 2 cash machines, 10 men held the security guards hostages, robbed the guests at a party in a private club, and escaped in waiting speedboats. Right out of Hollywood, isn't it? Regulators, Department of Energy, no more Hanford demolition until we say it's safe. Department of Energy, we will say it's safe. Only part of the main production area of the plutonium finishing plant, like Hanford, in the late 40s and early 50s, donated 450,000 gallons, or billion gallons, directly into the soil of nuclear sludge, and is equal to an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. Demolition was stopped at the plant in mid-December after specs of fuel. If it's specs, it's going to be fuel, right? A radioactive fuel was discovered to have spread around outside a containment zone established around demolition. Well, when you look at this, there is no radiation. It's like telling a crow that lands in your garden not to fly away. That's what you're talking about. You have no control. Sanofi boom comes from Los Alamos laboratory. Big surprise there. Los Alamos National Laboratory, one of the biggest disease factories in history, where they couldn't even replicate their fusion experiment that they got everybody to buy shares in the fusion companies with. Debate over pits, which is uranium pits. It's uranium cores you're talking about, right? So they're like the size of a soccer ball, maybe getting real. And the reason they're doing it at Los Alamos National Laboratory was because the Savannah River site, after I don't know how much money, billions of dollars, and how many years you worked trying to build a mixed oxide facility, but currently there was like $9 million worth of just piping sitting there that didn't get used. And the list goes on and on. For Navy submarine missiles, they created 29 last year. Since 2011. Wow. You can't use them. What's the point of making them? Yucca is obvious answers to the nuclear waste question. Well, the problem with Yucca Mountain was, first off, it's on an earthquake fault line, and second off, the calculation for how much waste you can put in there was based on how much heat it can hold for 200 years. I don't know why they would only use a 200-year equation. And so what the crazy industry wanted to do was fill it up with air conditioners, because that can't possibly go wrong. The nation has no other viable option to Yucca Mountain, so stop creating it then. There is no safe storage of used fuel. See, and when you talk about the safe storage, the problem with the fuel is it's still splitting atoms into the environment. There's no containment. And that's why the majority of nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. Fukushima dairy farmers looking to large-scale reconstruction farms revive battered industry. It's the nuclear wasteland, for goodness sakes. Minnesota, which is a massive nuclear wasteland. Katawamata is a massive, and Lydia is another massive nuclear wasteland, where the residents all fled after the triple core meltdown. It was 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools melted down. And so they downplayed every facet of the story and then downplayed it in increments every year since, right? The nuclear graveyard in Plymouth, where nuclear submarines go to die and hemorrhage radiation into the communities. Because they just abandoned them, right? So Plymouth in the United States is 13. And why would you call it royal, for goodness sakes? Morons. Well, that's United Kingdom, is it? I'm sorry. Scotland. I think they currently have 19, actually. 2018. Drawing competition for nuclear energy at David Memorial. I mean, it's really shocking how much the nuclear industry's infiltrated everybody's lives, right? Here they are going after the students in school with no counter narrative to protect the students. Can Dominion Energy clean up its nuclear mess? So nuclear is just one great big stupid disease factory. Feds say Los Alamos National Laboratory failed to track toxic beryllium. Failed to track it. And what else, I wonder? Small amounts causes lung diseases and cancers. Maniacs. Nuclear war became more likely this week. Swiss nuclear plant low risk of radioactivity waste facilities. Swiss nuclear plant plans a low risk nuclear disease factory. Is that the one they were going to build under the ocean? I can't remember. Which brings up a good point. We should, it's so hard to do, right? But we should really cover each year of the stuff we've already covered. And it's probably going to take you 12, 14 days to cover, just run through a year's worth of stories. But in order to keep it into the consciousness, you almost need to do it. I almost need to do 7 shows a week just to keep, and do stuff like we're doing tonight to catch up on stories that have gone down. Because if I don't cover this tonight, this has been down the rabbit hole since 2019. This has disappeared since 2019. We've covered all of these stories, right, extensively. Former Hanford worker was awarded $8 million in retaliation case. Oh yeah, they don't like whistleblowers. I remember that one, Julie Atwood. Judge refuses to reduce the verdict, so the nuclear industry will just drag it out for another 30 years. Sweden to reissue booklet of World War precautions. Because they were planning on joining NATO, and now they have. NATO is, if you look up NATO, it says 30 militaries. It was created during the Soviet Union as a reply to the Soviet Union, because it was such a powerful nation, right? And then when Chernobyl melted down, that was the catalyst for the... So Gorbachev, then, the coward, moron, dissolved the country. And when you dissolve a country, you dissolve the pensions and the patents of the country. It's like taking away the food from the whales. Everything's going to die. Experts stress the role of nuclear energy in the quest to feed the world. Man. Maniacs, eh? What to do in case of a nuclear attack? Duck and cover? Remember that? In 2018 when the alerts were sent out to mobile phones across Hawaii, and all it said was a ballistic missile threat is inbound to And another one came across the television screens in Hawaii. Said, if you're indoors, stay indoors. If you're outdoors, seek immediate shelter in a building. Remain indoors, away from the windows. If you're driving, pull safely to the side of the road and seek shelter in a building. Go break into a building or lay on the floor. Incoming nuclear weapons. Remember that story? That was something. Nuclear is such a scumbag. Nuclear is such a permanent douche. I see we're getting spammed again tonight. What else is new, right? Well, it was only spam. We're only being spammed because we're suggesting that the fake 1,000 tanks, the tanks are empty, see? So if it was about the 1,000 tanks, they could just take a mine shaft or a borehole and dump it down there, see? If it was really, truly just tritium, no one would have an issue with it. And what about the 30 million one-ton bags? Let me bring up a picture of that so you can actually wrap your mind around the horror of that particular story. Nuclear is extremely good at genocide. Look how batshit crazy the nuclear industry actually is. Where it's harvesting food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. There's 30 million of them. And so why not dump them in a big mine shaft rather than grow food there and murder people? Because that's murder when you do that. That's genocide. Back to normal. WIP plant's first maintenance outage since reopening. It was closed for years and years after they had a meltdown. That they eventually came out with a cover story of kitty litter. And this was 2014, where they abandoned the site because they said they had a truck fire. I can bring you all the evidence, but not going to. But anyway, they abandoned WIP because they had a truck fire in a mine shaft, where each mine, there was 55 mine shafts, and each one is the size of a football field. And one of their salt trucks, which is really low, it's a cut half a truck high, the front tire caught fire. And so they abandoned 55 football field-sized caverns for 10 days. And then when they went to go back in there, they found radiation, so they couldn't go back. And so they had to dig new holes and start again a few years later. They spent around $6 billion on a truck fire. $6 billion. And successfully covered it up. And KRQE, I think it is, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, took my video in 2014, chopped it up, and put it on TV and called me a conspiracy theorist. But all I was doing was showing the documentation that they released. But thanks, Albuquerque, for demonizing me. I expect no less. And we came out, and that's how we found Dr. Raymond Gilnetty, the mass beagle, puppy, and dog genocide machine, which was a Loveless Respiratory Research Institute that killed the beagle dogs and puppies with plutonium and curium, which, by the way, is the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods. The outage is the first since 2013 due to the recovery efforts after the accidental radiological releases in 2014 led to a 3-year shutdown. They still haven't replaced the air pump. It pumps down like 500,000 cubic meters a day or something. It's so radioactive, right? They still can't get near it. So how did that become so radioactive? They're expensive. They're like $40 million or something. The director of the Southwest Research Information Center's nuclear waste program acts as environmental watchdog. They're not a watchdog, for goodness sakes. University of California official promises better management of Los Alamos National Laboratory. Oh yeah, sure. And who's going to watch them? I can't remember, like 5,000 nuclear scumbags worked there or something. proponent of nuclear energy phase out, Hitoshi Yoshida, oh God, dies at 64. He was a leading figure to move to phase out the use of nuclear power. Bless your heart. He died of tumors from nuclear fallout from Japan, no doubt. Electricity from all forms of renewables will be consistently cheaper than fossil fuel by 2020. By 2026, they expect to have the equivalent of all gas, oil, coal, and nuclear plants worldwide online in renewables just in that 6-year period. Risk remains from the French Shigigo nuclear waste disposal units. It seems endless, right? And you know why? Because it is. The nuclear industry's legacy, 80-year legacy, is brutal. It's brutal to every species, particularly children and small species. It's deadly. And there's 1,800 diseases from radiation you got to worry about. Literally the entire medical book, because your immune system is compromised on top of it. A project designed to bury France's highly radioactive, which they turn a lot of their waste into mixed oxide fuel. France isn't, like what France done to the French Polynesians for 30 years was equal, with the nuclear testing, was equal to Nagasaki bomb every week for 12 years. And even today, they refuse to acknowledge there are any adverse side effects from it. Letters, nukes don't kill people, people kill people. And to protect myself, I need a nuke. These are maniacs, eh? I'm not going to try because we got too much. Let's keep running. We're never going to get through it all. We're covering 2018, January the 13th, 2018. So not 2019, like I said earlier, my apologies. It's 2018. This is January, the month of January we're trying to cover. Not February, not March, not April, but just January. All of the stuff up to now is January. Let me go backwards for a second. Tears and panic. I mean, all of Hawaii went into, I love you, honey, blah, blah, blah. Everybody was, and then it didn't happen, right? But everybody was just, it was pandemonium. There was looting. It was madness. Claiming there was coming from North Korea, the freaking pricks. Excuse me, my apologies. New Mexico nuclear waste repository closed for maintenance. Maintenance. So that truck you're looking at was what they said melted down. The tire caught fire in 2014 on Valentine's Day. And that's why they didn't go back for 3 years. TEPCO to Japan times are such scumbags, aren't they? TEPCO to resume attempt to probe damaged reactor Fukushima number 1 plant. Surveyed a crippled number 2 reactor using a telescopic arm. And once it goes in there, you can never use the arm again or go near it, right? And they were trying to get a few grams or something, they said. Of course, this was nonsense. The reactors melted down and went China syndrome in reactor 1 and 2. Details remain largely unknown due to high levels of radiation. High levels. It was over 1 million sieverts outside of reactor 1, which probably part of a reactor core from number 3 or 4 that detonated and was turned into projectiles, right? But nevertheless, it was there and it was catastrophic to the homeless and the destitute. NHK apologized because nuclear scientists don't go there, ever. In 12 years, they don't go there. NHK apologizes for false missile alert. Oh, yeah, it was North Korea. Disgusting. Why would North Korea launch a nuclear weapon when they're surrounded by nuclear weapons waiting for them to do that? That was United Nations, see? They're the only one that could have done that. But it was panic. People are still freaked out about it today, all these years later. 38 minutes of terror in Hawaii. Oh, I forgot about that story. That's such a great story. It shows you how dysfunctional the hideous nuclear industry actually is. Everywhere they looked, people below me were running for cover. One man gone for a morning swim, come racing out of the water, run up the beach towards the nearest building, not stopping for his little pile of clothing and beach towels. The sirens were sounding, the hotel intercom systems were repeating, "Seek shelter, stay away from the windows. Kim Jong-un is gonna get your ass." It made more sense to try to head for high grounds and risk radiation poisoning from the nuclear fallout. Such scumbags, man. And no one was ever held accountable for that, by the way. 1980, state law banning nuclear disaster planning. Because if the town council seen the planning, they would abandon nuclear, right? They wouldn't have built it. A state law banning nuclear disaster planning. My God, eh? 34-year-old Washington state law banning preparation for nuclear attack could be overturned. After Hawaii missile scare, look back at aging nuclear fallout shelters in East Tennessee. How a planned nuclear waste dump in the tiny southern Australia town of Kimba impacts us all. So they wouldn't let the natives vote in the referendum. And the referendum was segregated to Kimba, not the rest of Australia. And they threw millions of dollars around in the town 2 years before they had the so-called referendum, where the natives weren't, and natives took them to court this year and won. Just a few weeks ago, we covered that, right? And they bought up farmland as usual. The Canadian Nuclear Waste Management Organization, they bought like 1,600 acres of prime farmland in Bruce in Ontario. The Hawaii alert was an accident. Look, like you can't have an accident like that. It has to go through probably 5 or 6 people before you can actually turn the siren on. They were high on billions of dollars, and you decided to have a bit of fun at your expenses. That's what that was. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. And so people friggin' just lost their minds, hugging each other, saying, "I love you, honey." And they were just standing there waiting to be blown up by North Korea, because you got to demonize North Korea. Fukushima native shares her story at movie showing. I don't even know. I'm not even going to try. Keep going here. The government decided to hide how bad the radiation near Fukushima was. And they could be damaged by earthquakes forever, right? And they have major earthquakes at the nuclear disease factory in Fukushima, as it is every year. Taiwan Orchard Island. So Orchard Island was where they stuffed all the natives in Taiwan to, from the Chinese did. And so Taiwan started feeling pretty powerful, and they decided they were going to push the natives all out onto Orchard Island. Get out there and stay out of our face. And so eventually they decided they need a nuclear waste dump. They didn't want to do it in Taiwan. So they asked natives on Orchard Island if they could build a canning factory for crabs and tuna and stuff like that. And the natives were like, "Yeah, well, that sounds great. We got no jobs here." And so they built a nuclear waste dump there and pretended it was a canning factory for salmon, crabs, and tuna. And when the natives found out what was going on, they said, "Oh, well, too late, you signed the contract." Ha ha ha. And they couldn't beat them in court, and they're still fighting about it today. Disgusting, eh? Not really. That's normal. That's nuclear. Yeah, it's disgusting, don't get me wrong. But it's normal. It's nuclear. That's what they do. That's the most degenerate thing they can do today. Don't tell them because they'll go out and do it. For goodness sakes, don't give them any hints. They're evil enough on their own. Speaking of evil, and I mean, the ultimate evil is the International Atomic Energy Agency's big brother known as UN. Because they have all kinds of subsidies, right? They have UNSCLEAR and ERPA and the IPCP. They have the International Atomic Energy Agency, many, and they all certify each other. Oh no, they're pretty good. We trust them. They're all the same organization, the military-industrial complex. Saving lives with the right dose of radiation. Don't you believe them for a second. Saskatchewan research have been at it. Remember what they were using? You know, their original versions of this was radon lipstick, radon suppositories, radon toothpaste, radon makeup, radon. It was endless. And everybody that utilized it died a horrific, unbelievable, hideous death from it. So, our bad. Nobody got held accountable. And no incentive not to be evil, so they just came out with another genocidal machine. Saskatchewan Research Council defends uranium mine cleanup plan as estimated cost balloons from $24 million to $280 million. So the uranium mines here in Canada clean up, just the mines. They expect it's going to be 300 million. Well, obviously, it's going to be 280. It's going to be 580 or a billion or something, right? And you see all the fresh water in the background. Do you really think that there's 7,000 of these lakes all interconnected, and so all of them gets poisoned. It's the only thing they're good at, and they got it to a science. They're extraordinarily good. Bechtel, which shouldn't even exist, wins $1.75 billion to supply to naval nuclear propulsion components. The most insidious thing you can do is let nuclear on your oceans and your fresh waters. Everybody will live to regret that, and their loved ones will probably, or else. Nuclear lab employees with radiation leak cancer has been forced to wait years for potential benefits. And some of this got mixed up. Look at that, November the 30th, 2018. That was in the wrong spot. I must have dragged it accidentally in there years later, or months later. Nuclear lab employees with radiation leak cancers. Oh, that was supporting documentation. Failing to limit radiation exposure and wait for it. One of the worst radiation events in decades. There was 967 people applied individually and been denied compensation for cancer. And another 800 people were approved for disability from cancers. So around 1,700 people with cancers. Should Japan dump 1,000 tanks and the 30 million one-ton bags of radiation into the mine shaft and boreholes? And look at the spammers showing up tonight. Wow. Wow, eh? That's nuclear. That's all you can do. You can call in Scumbag Nuclear. You don't have to spam. Call in and have a conversation. 709-589-4406. All lines are open. All lines are open. Come on, call in whoever's spamming me. Anxiously waiting. Post-Fukushima iodine-129 concentrations North Pacific Ocean. Hang on. in Canada, a study out of Ottawa, Canada, showed 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall sustained of iodine-129 after Fukushima, with a 15 million year half-life. Nothing got out though, Dana. Oh, I forgot that. Thank goodness. Transgenerational effects of historic radiation doses of pale grass blue butterflies around Fukushima. Temporal changes in ambient dose rates in the forest environment of Fukushima following Fukushima. There's so many studies. I'm not going to go through them tonight. Well, we'll just flash through these couple. So if you decide you want to stop and read it later, it'll be there. No significant concentrations, yet Canada was pounded, like I just showed you. Well, effects of evacuation. There is no effects. They evacuated 15 million people at a time for typhoons and cyclones. There never been people dropping dead by the thousands like Fukushima, and there wasn't millions or anything else of people with liver functions from hurricanes and cyclones. The only time you see these adverse effects are nuclears involved. And the studies clearly show just hang on, I'll bring it up. So the dog studies, the tumors, there was 3 types of tumors. Let's do it this way. I'm doing the show early. I was so upset last night. We didn't get a full show in. And here we go. Let's do this. Toxicity of inhaled plutonium dioxide in beagle dogs. This is a Loveless Respiratory Research Institute. Killed 144 beagle dogs. And tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occur beginning about 3 years after exposures. So they usually ended up with 3 tumors, but most of them died from the bone tumors first, or lung tumors first, and bone tumors next. And this story here, 60,000 tons of sediment from the water filtration facilities in Niigata Prefecture government. They couldn't get rid of it. They wanted TEPCO to take it because it's so radioactive. 200 kilometers from Fukushima, 60,000 tons of mud. The mud was the sediment from the water filtration facility. So you couldn't drink the water because if the sediment, which is only a fraction, is so incredibly radioactive you can't get rid of it. That was 60,000 one-ton truckloads. And that's not tritium, but cesium. The operator refused, saying it can't handle another 60,000 one-ton bags. It's got 30 million one-ton bags already. So why not dump it into a mine shaft or a borehole? Why would you say no to that? And how come you don't? You got all those people saying no, neither one of them articulating why, or neither one of them calling into the show. So it's the same person spamming me over and over, right? It don't matter. What really matters, the level of radioactive cesium in the mud is below 8,000 becquerels per kilogram, which could be disposed of by regular landfill because this is what they've done. They made it legal to dump 8,000 into your local landfills. You can't do that anywhere else on the planet, but you can do it in Japan. And how are you supposed to have a future doing that? Claiming that most of it below 100 becquerels per kilogram, you're only talking about cesium. You got to multiply it by 600 to get all the other isotopes. Dishonesty is natural for nuclear industry. Genocide and omnicide is the preferred modus. And it grows by 5,000 tons a year of the water filtration sediment left over from filtering water is too radioactive to get rid of. That's just in one spot by Tokyo. After a run of tainted food scandals, women in Japan took control of the system, and we've covered these. This is obviously controlled opposition. So instead of moving the victims out of the nuclear wasteland, they got people who don't even know what they're doing and claiming that it's safe. Oh, bring us your food, we'll check it. And so they make a bunch of money and everybody else gets sick and die. Where's the universities? Where's the academics? Where's the NGOs? Where's the New World Series is funded by Partners for a New Economy and the Kendina Fund. And so a lot of these foundations have been taken over by the industries after the original people dies. And that's why you can't have a foundation to do good, because it'll get taken over by the industry. Now used for genocide. Now used the opposite. Japan is still grappling with the fallout. I'm not going to go through that story because it upsets me how evil there actually are. I should go through, but it's an enormous amount to get through. That's not what we're doing. We're just trying to cut through a bunch of headlines from 2019. That was 2019. Radiation doses. This was all from January 2019. I get a little confused sometimes. I apologize. Sometimes, like when I'm doing these stories, I'll bring in supporting documentation from last year or the year before, or the original documentation, and apparently that's what I got done. So you can't clean up by chopping down leaves, and it doesn't work that way. Nagata rice exports to China starts. Nagata is a nuclear wasteland. One great big stupid nuclear wasteland. On trial basis, lifted its import ban on Nagata rice in November last year. So the Japs were pretty happy with themselves. We'll kill all of them. Nagata government to handle radioactive mud stored since the Fukushima crisis. Yeah, so that's the same spot. How can a company be licensed to create nuclear waste but can claim not to be able to dispose of it? And then somebody said, how are they going to dispose of it because you can't be cleaned? Prerequisite for being ashamed is curing. That's a great statement, isn't it? New technique offers rapid assessment of radiation exposure. Don't believe that one. Everybody's heavily exposed for the last 80 years, but Fukushima was a massive event. Might be used in places like Fukushima for putting people's minds at ease. Well, how can you put someone's mind at ease in a nuclear wasteland? Right, so it's completely dishonest, whatever it is they're up to. Remember, the building doesn't even exist anymore. But they're pretending they got the fuel out of the pool. Everything was hunky-dory. All the media was pretending they were in the fuel pool. And everything is hunky-grady-dory. Sowing seeds of hope in Fukushima, where they're growing cotton, radioactive cotton in the nuclear wasteland, because nobody wants the food from there. But now they're claiming there's nothing got out, everything is in the tanks, and by the way, it was only 2.2 grams of tritium. And he started doing that 6 weeks ago, and we covered it for 6 weeks. But tonight we're just trying to walk away kind of and show you the ludicrous of headlines from a different year, that when you look at what they're saying now, the stuff I'm showing you now disproves everything they're saying for the last 6 weeks, don't it? Chinese residents concerned over imports of rice produced near Fukushima disaster. Concerned. Ex-official of Nuclear Supervision Agency to stay jailed in an embezzlement case. And by rights, every one of the people with that job should be jailed worldwide, because that's what they do. Scientists are automating plutonium production so NASA can explore deep space. And NASA's legacy is hideous, isn't it? Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Speaking of hideous, Oak Ridge National Laboratory. You can't keep up with how evil these people actually are. And all of this stuff was originally down the black hole of headlines. I dug it up to show you the ludicrousness of what they're saying now compared to what they were saying just a couple of years ago. Two government employees had weapons-grade plutonium stolen from their rental car. Dude, where's my weapons-grade fissile materials? Think about what kind of low life you got to be to put that statement right there. Think about the disconnect you got to have to put that statement there. The incredible contempt. The violet snail conspiracy. Let's keep rolling. I got no idea what all of this is about. I forget. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Hitachi to spend all work on the UK nuclear plant. Remember that? Funding deadlock. United Kingdom is promoting nuclear, but they won't fund it. And China got pushed out, chased out. So why did you let them in the first place? Japan's Olympic chief faces corruption charges in France. Yeah, the Olympics is what? The corruption in the Olympics is what's the word for it? Is legendary. Radiation doses underestimated in study of city in Fukushima. What? Really? Well, officially 2023, there's nothing got it, only 2.2 grams. But don't worry, it's in 1,000 tanks, ain't it? Date City, 60 kilometers from the nuclear meltdowns, which is, and we covered Date. I forgot about Date. We got a folder there on Date somewhere. It's a massive nuclear wasteland. Even if residents lived in the most contaminated areas of Date for 60 years, the minimum dose would not exceed 18 millisieverts, the scumbag claimed. Like you're breathing particles, and you don't measure in millisieverts and microsieverts that far away. You're going to measure in atoms and becquerels, atomic decays per second, physical atoms. Again, right, it's the scumbag of scumbag. This is what we used to call it, the nuclear scumbag show was during this period. It was only recently we changed to Fukushima nuclear meltdown and radioactive news show. And you got the race export, they were gloating a lot about that during that period. And the government can't handle the radioactive fallout from the mud, which is sediment from the water reclamation facilities, water filtration plants. New technique offers rapid assessment of radiation exposure. Again, why is that there again? Oh, that came out again, okay. So was that one. What's going on? Let's keep moving. Residents concerned over imports of rice produced from the nuclear wasteland. Thank God somebody's worried. A fresh start. This is where they brought cows in. Raw milk for the first time in 7 years and 10 months. in one of the most radioactive nuclear wastelands there actually is. Just because you lifted the evacuation zone don't mean it's safe. It just means scumbags got control of your country. And I remember this story so clear. It was so disturbing they done that. How women in Japan are making food safer. And you see the same group are in the media today. Right? There's no academics, no universities, no institutions. It's a couple of women. And they raised over $730,000 to take samples and stick it in a Geiger counter. All they got to do is pretend there's nothing there, and nuclear industry is happy. Number 4 tourists in Japan 2018 was a record high. Well, somebody's got to eat the rice and get sick and die, Dana. It can't be all Japanese. I hear you. 31 million victims. Britain's failing nuclear plan poses a huge question for power. Britain is a failure, right? The nuclear industry. The UK nuclear renaissance is a zombie. That's pretty polite. Claiming nuclear energy, which have virtually no greenhouse gases. I hate that statement because it's so dishonest. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. Are hemorrhaging radiation into the environment 24 hours a day. Currently, the whole planet is burning, right? Killer whales are starving. They can't find food because they only eat Chinook salmon. Well, they actually eat over 300 species. If you can't find salmon, they're going to snack on something else. They're not going to go on a hunger strike. So what's going on? Oh, it's called, they have leukemia. That's why they're so emaciated. They can't find any food, see? No, there is food there. They can't eat it because they have 1,000 becquerels a kilogram is what the estimates were. One thing we can count on, though, is that the nuclear, if it can be a scumbag, it'll do twice as good as any other group of people. Yeah, they're emaciated. They can't find their salmon. Dana? Dead whales being eaten by sharks, and they'll be dead, and they'll have sharks. Dead whales eaten by sharks. State warns public stay away from Sand Island after whale carcass is removed. Matriarch of well-known orca family is starving to death. What they call the peanut head, It stands out. When you see that, you know, and it's caused by radiation poisoning, right? They have leukemia. That's why they're so emaciated. They can't uptake nutrition anymore. They bioaccumulated so much radiation because they're the apex predators. Two dead whales wash ashore hours apart in Boston and Revere. Two washing, like pre-Fukushima, the odds of finding 2 dead whales on the same beach was considered impossible. After Fukushima, you might find 300 on the same beach. Like they done down in Peru a few years ago, for instance. I can't remember which whales they were. I should dig that up, but we got too much to get through. And that's emaciated. That's the other one. That's a sperm whale, I wonder? I can't tell. 2 dead whales washed ashore. Well, that's actually 3. me go back there. 30-foot long dead whale washes ashore in India, I think that is. North Carolina, United States. Is an endangered species with 16.5 feet long. An adult sing whale, can grow to 65 feet. So that was a baby, basically. The animal was very, very, very thin. It was emaciated. And gray whales, I think they're done on average about 1,800 a year, and the majority of them are emaciated. So that one in the background, you can see the tail, that's clearly emaciated. Yeah, that's clear it's emaciated, not maybe. That's 100% emaciation. And we see the head again. Yeah, look at the peanut head, wow. Carcass of dead whale is sought in Stratford. Dead whale beginning December, confirmed to be a rare pygmy sperm whale. It's another one. Dead whale in popular Gold Coast beaches. Right after Fukushima, within a year or something, this became normal. Scumbag in the news. The scumbag apologists cracked me up. Humpback whale found dead on Saudi beach where it absolutely doesn't belong. After losing their way. Well, these whales don't lose their way. Record year for marine animal strandings in Scotland. 100 beak whales, which means roughly 1,000 beak whales died. You're only gonna, if you're lucky, you find 10%, right? It was the largest of its kind, and the beak whales are extraordinary. You never find them pre-Fukushima. They're deep water divers, right? They feed on squid. They're deep divers. So over 100 showed up. Last year was 670 strandings. A dead whale washed ashore near Port of Bass, where I'm to. Beach and sand clement packed after whale washes ashore. Notice they weren't trying to blame it on windmills back then. And that one you can see by his tail. That's emaciated. 80-foot blue whale. Imagine, eh? Emaciated. Look at his at the back part of it. Dead humpback whale. Whale saves the snorkeler. Wow. Shark fears more dead whales wash up on Western Africa's coast, or Western Australia's coast. That's crazy. A 40-foot long endangered giant whale washes ashore in Odessa. That's India, I believe, is it? Or Pakistan? Yeah, that's India, I'm sure of it. And that was emaciated. Tilly come the whale, dead at 36. Scientists perform a necropsy on a dead whale. That one's emaciated, big time. This story, students asked to develop dishes with Fukushima radioactive products to promote the prefecture's recovery. Think about how sick you are to do something like that. Elementary, junior high, and high school students told to come up with recipes to promote food from a nuclear wasteland because nobody wants it. And these children should have been evacuated. Yeah, nuclear is excellent at genocide and omnicide. Useless at everything else. Nuclear reactors sought from the French joint are not safe. There's an understatement of the year. State begins killing sea lions to save the salmons. Well, they should kill the salmon to save the little insects, shouldn't they? Monarch butterfly population, California plummeted 86% in a year because they're radioactive pollen. That's all normal. Look, showing a kick in the seal up into the air. Look at that. Wow. Sea lion pups rescued across Sutherland beaches. And they show you one with a hook in his mouth, right? But the majority of them were emaciated because there's no food. We say pups, not pup. Emaciated and malnourished. And so a fishing hook looked like food to them, right? Every winter, thousands of Magellan, I can't even pronounce it tonight, penguins, either dead, injured, or covered in oil. Why are more female penguins washing up dead in South America? They can't find enough food, so they're starving to death, right? So they go to the beach to die because they can't find any food. We've seen a lot of that over the last decade, my goodness. So they were trying to blame nationals for the mass fish death. The stench of 1 million dead fish in Darling River. This is Australia, yeah. Been blamed on mismanagement and corruption. The huge Murray cods are about 80 years old, and they survived the drought and extreme weathers. Another dead dolphin on Cornwall Beach. Spinner dolphin found on an Indonesian beach. A dolphin playing with a surfer. That's crazy, you know. Imagine how exceptional that is to be out there doing that. Seabird colonies are struggling as winter sea ice levels hover near a record low. No, the migratory birds didn't even show up here. 46 million of the seabirds, the biggest migratory run on the entire planet where I'm to, haven't showed up.
Wow, that's...
I love this picture. It's such a great picture. Not the two of Dana's, but polar bear is feeding on a whale. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Don't ask me because I don't know what those pictures are all about. I'm not going to play it because I'm not sure if it's copyright or not, right? So, should they take 30 million one-ton bags? Should Japan dump 1,000 tanks and 30 million one-ton bags of radiation into a mine shaft or a borehole? And so we got spammed heavily, man. Wow, that's brutal. That's spam. Whoever's doing all the no is the same person. A bunch of accounts. Energy leaders need to pay more attention to fusion. Well, fusion doesn't exist. And so you can't have a future with that mentality, see? Cost for scrapping Japan's nuclear facility. Scrapping. You're a long way from scrapping it. You can't scrap it. There's nothing there that can go to the scrap yard. Maybe she should scrap the dump and then put everything in a mine shaft along with these 30 million one-ton bags she got. Allegedly, they got 60 million, but say 30 million to be safe. Japan says 30 million one-ton bags will not be moved for 20 years. Ho, ho, ho. The scale of a reprocessing plant is so large the amount of potential radioactive waste could increase in quantity, and thus the cost to decommissioning such a facility becomes enormous. Can the uranium market bounce back? Can the uranium market bounce back? No. God, no. Former top regulator now says nuclear power is hazardous. Oh, that's Greg Jasko. What a scam artist that freaker is, right? President Trump made the statement in an interview. He's winning in the polls right now, right? And if he gets elected, you can't prosecute him when he's elected. And the more they attack him, the more his polls go up. He's probably going to win again. Moving to Japan, my first Christmas in a nuclear wasteland. Lots of stupid people out there. Why would you move to a nuclear wasteland, though? Where did your parents fail you? Oh, I see. Oh, that's another stupid English teacher that's working in Japan. They pay him to post, right? Fukushima residents returned despite radiation. Look at him with a big stupid smile on his face. Yeah, I'm stupid. It's true. Why would you go back to a nuclear wasteland? What part about nuclear wasteland is that you can't wrap your freaking mind around it? The post-nuclear, not quite apocalypse of the children. This was a play about Fukushima? I can't remember. This is 2019, so. A frog shrouds Vancouver skylines and cell services. No, that's that fog comes through
Vancouver,
your car.
these scenes are common in January.
Yeah, but not like that. Energy leaders need to pay more attention to fusion in 2019. We've seen that earlier, didn't we? Koizumi says, the former Prime Minister of Japan says Japan must say no to scumbag nuclear. Nuclear power plants are running safely after East Coast quake. We're just trying to run through headlines from January 2019. We're not going to get through it. As the ocean rises, so does the risk of breast cancer. That's going to be one of the strangest statements imaginable. There's a lot of breast cancer caused by radioactive fallout, right? Because it sequesters in the breasts of all kinds of species, but it won't do to humans? Come on. And that was the Weather Network. Good way of brainwashing a majority of the population, isn't it? Residential exposure to fine particulate matter, air pollution, incident breast cancers in a cohort of the Canadian women. Well, see, they removed all restrictions on Fukushima food after 93 days in Canada, and 55 countries banned it for a decade. So Japan couldn't ship the food anywhere, only to Canada. And the studies from Canada was massive radioactive fallout from Japan. Nuclear is, it's a perpetual scumbag. Japan's Hitachi freezes the British nuclear project. I did some laughing when that happened. And look, surrounded by farms, nuclear plants, what's the odds? At least you're not that guy. That homeless guy. He would have died that day, whoever's doing that. They're spraying a reagent on the fuel pellets. That's what he used, that particular stuff. Robots being programmed to adapt in real time. Yeah, none of them can survive for 2 minutes at Fukushima. If progressive Democrats care so much about the climate, why are they trying to kill nuclear power? Oh, no less than degenerate Michael Schellenberg himself. What a horrific creature he turned out to be. So we're just going to shoot through the headlines to see how many we can get in the next few minutes. Climate change, is nuclear power the answer to the BBC? No, of course not, dummy. The biggest, 15 container ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. How energy guzzler Sweden has risen to the climate challenge by building nuclear disease factories. It's so stupid, this narrative that they're using, but the majority of the people don't know the difference, right? And it works, and they don't care if it does or not. That's their official story, so get lost. San Onofre nuclear site is fatally flawed. There's an understatement. And these are all stories we covered in 2019. Right? Everybody remembers this piece of shit? I'm not going to get into it, but Korea appealed to the World Trade Organization over Fukushima seafood ban because the World Trade, which is United Nations, said South Korea had to take food from Fukushima. So South Korea appealed it, and eventually a year later or something won it. The author is a professor of nuclear engineer. In other words, he's a mass murdering scumbag, a degenerate coward who will sell out you and your loved ones for his paycheck. Let's keep rolling. Multiple homes in Shelter Cove damaged by unprecedented waves. Unprecedented. Never seen waves like that before. Get used to it. Fukushima's changed the weather. It's 80 years of emissions, but Fukushima was the tipping point. Don't drink sake. Just say no, for God's sakes. They're purposely trying to poison you. Duck and cover. Trust the science. They got 60 million 1 ton or 30 million 1 ton bags. So rather, should they grow food in it or put it down in an old abandoned mine shaft? Seems like everybody wants them to grow food in it, but that's just the nuclear industry spamming me. Speaking of spammers, this scumbag, you got Michael Schellenberg, hunger strike after rejecting signatures for pro-nuclear referendum. So this degenerate nuclear physicist allegedly went on a hunger strike. We know he didn't. So he can get importing Fukushima food from the nuclear wasteland on the ballot for Taiwan. Taiwan voted it 70-something% no. So 2 years later, when the ballot initiative ran out, they didn't have another referendum. They just removed the restrictions and never even had a conversation. Yeah, these are insidious, gross people. At the same time, speaking of gross, James Hansen headed down there. We covered all this, of course. That's where we got this stuff. James Hansen went down to collect $1 million, $1.34 million cash award for the Asian Nobel Prize for promoting nuclear power. That's such a despicable headline. I resent them doing that. The Northern Hemisphere potentially in great danger as Fukushima radiation spikes to unimaginable levels. But that's the fallout of the tsunami, not radiation. And so they put that out there, and then when you believed it, they called you an idiot. I'm always marveling at how great nuclear is at being a scumbag. Development hell, uranium projects caught at a market crossroad. Is Wales the tipping point for nuclear energy? Again, anything to promote it. Journalists pretending to be in a melted nuclear reactor, Reactor 4. And so these people, at that time, are pretending they're in that building, and the fuel pools are at the very top of the building. The building doesn't exist. So why are they doing that? You gotta admit, that's some creepy ass shit, isn't it? But that's all they're only good at, being evil. They're not good at anything else. They're natural at being evil, though. Historical nuclear accident dashes Swiss atomic dreams. Switzerland had a nuclear accident. They covered up successfully, apparently. I got a folder there on it. We're not going to cover it tonight. 50 years ago, January 21st, 2019, a nuclear meltdown occurred in Switzerland's first experimental nuclear power station. There's nothing surprises me when it comes to nuclear, right? Japan night reception to serve a selection of gold prize-winning sake from a nuclear wasteland. 6 kinds of Fukushima nuclear prefecture sake. Fukushima is one of the major rice-producing prefectures in Japan, with over 30 million one-ton bags. Fukushima has 19 brands of sake. Take home the gold prize, almost all of them, right? At 850 entries submitted from across Japan, 232 were awarded the gold prize, and Fukushima topped the list of gold prizes by prefectures. So it's only there to manipulate you into being complacent and poisoning you and yourself and your loved ones at celebratory events, which is really despicable, isn't it? Technical failures increasing the risk of contaminated Fukushima water discharge into the Pacific, says Greenpeace. And Greenpeace vehemently denies the reactors and the fuel pools are gone. They vehemently deny Reactor 3 fuel pool is gone. And they blocked me for posting that on their Twitter, which is now called X. Really? Is nuclear power worth the risk? There's only 865,000 cancers in the first year in Japan. Cancer is just one of 1,800 diseases. Just a single particle can cause a cancer. What's the odds if you're working there, you're going to get a single one? You can't check radiation in seafood like that. You can find some, but you're not going to find the majority of it. The 90% of it, I should say. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. And you can't quantify that the food is safe by running a gamma spectrometer on it, let alone a Geiger counter, right? It doesn't work that way. It has to be dehydrated and is surrounded by lead bricks and everything else, and you have to calibrate for different isotopes. Michael Schellenberg, I cut everybody's throat, only it's illegal, so I'll find another way to do it and make it illegal. Shinzo Abe, we don't have to worry about him no more. Thank God, at least something good happened over the last decade. Sales pitch for Fukushima sake at Davos. Oh, that'll be the last time. He got the double shot. See this centaur-like robot designed to handle nuclear disasters. Again, none of these work. I can climb stairs. Again, this is nonsense. Once you get into a hot zone, all electronics crash. Huawei, which is a big cell phone, who knows what else they sell, restored 680 base stations after the Japanese nuclear emergency. Like it was nuclear meltdowns, it's a nuclear wasteland. 500,000 people forced to evacuate. No, Dane, it's 140,000. No, actually it was 500,000, you scumbags. A radioactive isotope was lost and found. 1 foot by 1 foot box triggered concern and panic as he searched frantically for it. You see, cesium-137 is most commonly produced as a byproduct in fission reactors of uranium and nuclear plants or nuclear explosions. It is thus part of the spent fuel. One of the biggest contaminations of cesium happened during Chernobyl. When over 27 kilograms of the metal entered the atmosphere. 27 kilograms! Fukushima lost around 20 million pounds, for God's sakes. TEPCO failed to spot a leak. Every time I heard the word leak, they want to cut the foot off a nuclear scientist or something. For more than 2 years, there's no impact on the environment. Officials said water contained 120,000 becquerels of tritium per liter. Lying seems to be the norm for 80 years. Department of Energy to host a TED Talk on nuclear energy. The Department of Energy. They do got to come out and apologize, I notice all the time. You notice that too? Empirical calibrations uranium released in terrestrial environment of nuclear fuel. It just hemorrhages. Like the reprocessing sites are brutal. I'm not going to go through because we got too much to finish out on. We're just trying to get through headlines, but I'll just flick through it. So there is a record again, finally, on the internet, because he took all of this stuff down when we were out looking for spiders, right? And so 1,600 of these presentations were like book burning, where they burned 1,600 of my books. It's really something. They do studies. When you start looking at all the different studies they produce, you start worrying, don't you? There's so many facets that people can't seem to comprehend. I had 1,685 videos back then. Not 1,600, but 1,685. They disappeared all of them on me with the stroke of a pen when I was out looking for spiders. We almost got 500 on this site in the last 2 years. which is pretty friggin' impressive, isn't it? Professor says nuclear energy is the safest. Oh, this is the guy who said all the waste can fit in a Coke bottle. Waste from a lifetime of nuclear energy use in the U.S. would fit in a soda can. And everybody who walked past that soda can for 1,000,000 years would drop dead. Nuclear is so evil, it doesn't even know it's supposed to be a human. No lack of dead whales. Unprecedented number of dead whales in Scotland and Ireland. Whales won't stop killing themselves in New Zealand. Stranded in Tasmania and rescuers rushed to help whales stranded in the Scottish Loch, thought to be a sperm whale. There's 14 of them ran up on the beach in New Zealand last year, sperm whales. Second whale in the month found beached on Hilton Head, still alive. Dead whales in New Zealand. Another 250 in another location in Zealand. Whales stranded near Henties. Can't keep up with it, eh? Stranded whales here, stranded there, stranded dolphins here. And so everyone you find, there's 10 more do you assume you didn't find. Euthanized, well, he's emaciated. Look at him. Diarrhea and blind. Saying it was in good body condition. I had diarrhea and I was blind. Oh, yeah. Thousands of birds died at the Salton Sea amid avian outbreak. Thousands of migrating birds have died at California's Salton Sea. Ducks, gulls, other birds. No, they starved to death, folks. We covered, when I remember we covered that. Why did a bird die off at the Salton Seas? Northland locals desperately try to shoo away a pod of dolphins that were trying to strand. I can't remember if they did or not. I guess they did for a bit. The shocking number of dead dolphins and porpoises washed up on Cornwall Beach. There's over 30 animals in January. Grim tally. Majority of them are going to be emaciated. Badger Beach killer whale buried, causes stranding and death still unknown. I hate the stranding networks. They've failed us many times over. Whale found in shallow water was emaciated, right? Remember that? Another one washed up in the middle of nowhere. Look at all the people pretending they're in Reactor 4 at Fukushima. The building doesn't even exist. They're not roof. That's what the building actually looks like. And that's the new version. Toshiba unveils a robot with tongs to probe the melt of the Fukushima nuclear fuel. Yeah, and we never heard of them again ever after, right? Scumbag. Non-Regulatory Commission issues final rule on Fukushima lessons from the World Nuclear News, the degenerate lobbying group. The NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission delegation on a visit to Fukushima in 2014. And they're pretending in 2014 that underneath the cover they put on, it looked like that. There is nothing left. You gotta give them a few points for being evil scumbags, because they're exceptionally evil, right? Completion of Fukushima 4 Daiichi cover, 2013. So here's the cover. Oh, there's nothing left of the building. It doesn't physically touch the building, but officially this is what they say it looks like on the inside of that. 2013 fuel removal underway, but it's not. You can't remove fuel from number 4 fuel pool. It can't look like that. And this at the same time. Oh, that's reactor 3, sorry. They done the same thing for reactor 3, by the way. Did I mention that? So it can't look like that and this. It has to be one or the other. That's the official picture. That's the official picture. I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? By the way, the fuel pool is at the very top of the building. There is no top to the building. It's just a stump. 1,500 assemblies. If you downplay it at 80 fuel rods each, 122,000 fuel rods at, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's 122 at 18 pounds each. They're 12 feet long. Is 2.2 million pounds. The fuel pools were stuffed with decades of reactor cores because they don't have a repository. Each pool was around 6 million pounds. Uranium Energy Corp lays the groundwork for market recovery. Well, at this point, uranium stocks were still flatlined at like $26 or something a pound. Camco says Canada Revenue Agency is appealing the tax court ruling in the company's favor because their stocks went up when they announced they got their money back, but then the Canadian tax court says they're going to bring them back to court. Remember Maralinga? What the British done to Australia? They waited for the wind to blow across Australia, and then they set off their nuclear weapons. Freaking trolls are gone crazy. 65 people says you shouldn't dump it in mine shafts and boreholes, but dump it in the ocean is better? Oh, you're like stupid? Oh, you literally got to be stupid to vote no. You literally got to be a moron to vote no. But the reality of it is, everything is gone. That's reactor 3. That's reactor 4. There's nothing there. The tanks are empty. The tanks were built to manipulate you so you didn't look at that or that or reactor 1 or reactor 2, see? Reviving idle nuclear plant, a flawed idea. Another understatement of the year. Whale death investigated. That's severe emaciation right there. Shark attacks drop worldwide and in Florida. Who knows? So here they are pretending they're at Fukushima 4, and that's what it actually looked like. There's nothing left. And I love these kinds of pictures where people stood there with brand new paper suits on. And there's always some or one or all of them pointing their fingers. First off, you see that stack there? That's a lethal dose. It's around 25 sieverts right there. And you couldn't stand up here without getting a lethal dose. Second off, that's multiple nuclear meltdowns, for God's sakes. The fuel pools are gone. They put that cover there to hide the building, and then they pretend that everything inside was normal. Everything inside was normal. They're so good at being evil, they never looked at the other side of the equation, right? And here they are pretending, this is Rupert Winfield Hayes from the BBC, pretending he's in a building that don't even exist. Like the rest of them, they don't exist. So they built this contraption. Look at the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. And so they built it off site and then assembled it, and then they show you pictures like this in beautiful paper suits. A paper suit can't protect you at a nuclear meltdown. By the way, this is a strange picture because normally this is what it looks like, right? And this really tells the story. There's nothing left of the building. Does the building look 190 feet tall to anybody? Is there anybody out there gullible enough to think it's 190 feet tall? The fuel pools are at the top of it, right? It's gone. That's the original footage. It's gone. And here's later. Look how much is left of the building. And so this, who knows how many homeless people you're looking at there, but that's enough to get sick for the rest of your life if you don't die that week from it. So they built this contraption off site, then they assembled it, and the whole process looks like that, right? And when they put this cover on it, then they pretended that they were in the building and that it looked like that. So this is officially what it looked like with the cover on it. But then they come out with pictures like this and pretend that that's inside the building that don't exist. They're so good at being evil, it blows me away. It really does. Because there's nothing left of the building. The building is completely leveled. They put that contraption on it and pretend it looked like the building to the left. NRC issues the final rule on the Fukushima lessons. This is them allegedly at the nuclear meltdown that is long gone. Debris cleaned up at Unit 4. Debris cleanup. So see, they call that the cover for the fuel removal, but the fuel pools were at the very top of the buildings. Not the bottom of the buildings. Right, so they put a cover over it and it looks like that. But it's just a cover. There is no building left. Now they claim it's like this. That's from 2013. But just to help you articulate, we're just trying to blast through all the headlines from January 2019, and January only, and we're done pretty good. We got through the majority of it. We're getting almost through it now. Because otherwise all these headlines go down the black hole and never be thought about or seen again. So it's important to, look through this, because I imported all this from all the folders, but I didn't get a chance to go through it. And this afternoon I was actually going to do a show and do the same as I'm doing here tonight, just run through this stuff, except I was going to run through it a different way. And I said, if I don't do it, I won't do it. So I better go ahead and do it. To say I have nothing but contempt for the nuclear industry would be very, very polite. Storage of nuclear waste is a global crisis. And all of it is hemorrhaging atoms into the environment because it's all splitting atoms. The Business Traveler's Guide to Deadly Sake. Oh, it looks so beautiful, yeah. Debt can do that sometimes. Anti-nuclear activist professor to meet the Dalai Lama. Anti-nuclear activist professor. So they use these people to displace people like me and you that are trying to have a real conversation. Government data shows an exodus to Tokyo from other parts of Japan continue. Saying that a post-war record high for deaths and a nuclear wasteland. Go figure, eh? Revisiting low-level radiation. And every time I see that, it's usually they're trying to get rid of the linear no threshold. And those who believe that the linear no threshold model should continue to be used to set radiation protection guidelines. And those who believe there is a threshold below which there are no negative health effects. So if a single atom gets in your body, or a bird or an insect or a child or an animal or whatever, the body attacks it for the rest of your lives with white blood cells, and for decades it'll try to build a sarcophagus around it. We call it a tumor, but because you're using white blood cells every second now for the rest of your life, your immune system becomes more compromised because you have less red blood cells, less oxygen, less nutrition. Life on the road, winter vacation in Japan. Potentially cheaper, faster Hanford radioactive waste treatment to be tested. Cheaper and faster. The so-called glassification facility took 18 years to build and around $30 billion. And once you turn it on, you can never go in there again. It's only meant to last 5 years. And then you got to get rid of all the building because it's all nuclear high-level waste. And the idea was to take the liquid in 177 tanks, 56 million gallons, and turn it in and put it inside a glass to contain it. But it doesn't work that way. The Wigner, the gamma shines, the alphas, the neutrons, the beta rays break down the integrity of I-beams. What do you think it's going to do to glass, for goodness sakes? And at Hanford dumped 450 billion gallons of the same exact stuff into the soil right alongside the Columbia River in the 40s and 50s is equal to a 6-foot wide, 518-foot tall wall wrapped around the entire planet and then some of radioactive high-level waste. Just another day in the evil world of nuclear. Man killed at a nuclear site failed to drop his cell phone. South Carolina utility gives up on plan for nuclear reactors. Yoo-hoo! Win. Can you trust your news feed? The new International Atomic Energy Agency studies how to mitigate the harm of misinformation in nuclear emergencies. Well, you don't want to listen to TV. You don't want to listen to the International Atomic Energy Agency. You positively, unequivocally don't want to trust anything with the word professor in front of it. Whatever they tell you, do the opposite immediately. Cost to taxpayers to clean up a nuclear waste jumps $100 billion in a year. They'll just steal everything you got and destroy everything else. That's nuclear. That's the best way to sum up nuclear. One great big piece of shit. One bunch of murdering bastards. And I had made a whole bunch of fun of that story there, where they had the nuclear scumbag, degenerate nuclear scientists in the classrooms to manipulate the children who are going to be graduating into getting careers in the degenerate nuclear industry. You see a lot of that over the years. It's real douchey. What do you do? Outrage after nuclear weapon convoy traveled through the Stirling city centre in the United Kingdom. In daytime, they had to block traffic so a nuclear convoy. And the convoy, the trucks are lined with lead to give the people on the road less of a radiation dose when they're driving past. So if your house is close to the road when they drive past, you're getting blasted with some kind of shine or neutron burst or something like that, or beta rays. Low-flying choppers monitoring radiation. That's how far the energy pulses, eh? For the Super Bowl, every year we cover that story. Oh, we're almost through, wow. Japan reports radiation leak from a nuclear fuel plant. Japan. Trusting Japan is the biggest mistake anybody on the planet will ever make. Radiation leaks out of Japan's plutonium lab. Japan shouldn't be allowed to have tritium, let alone plutonium, should they? But, each were wearing a mask. You can't filter this stuff. You can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. How the fuck are you going to filter that? Look at this stupid. How stupid. Does that look like a 190-foot building right there? Is anybody out there that gullible to think that's a 190-foot building? Oh me, oh my. We got spam pretty good there tonight. Let's finish it out. We haven't got very much to get through. Giant creepy, they're not creepy, they're wonderful, beautiful. They're creepy because the nuclear industry killed them, so they're too radioactive to us, and they're dead. But that's the nuclear industry done that. There's nothing creepy about these beautiful creatures. How can anybody look at that and say that's not absolutely stunning? Crowd-sized cut for sailing event over tsunami fears. This is in Japan for the Tokyo Olympics. They were going to cut down on the amount of people on the coastline because they're worried about tsunamis, but they're going to reopen the nuclear plants in the same place and not worry about it. Now, they didn't want people to be, if there's a lot of people there, then statistically a lot of these people would show up with cancers or illnesses or heart problems or liver problems from their exposures, right? Debunking the low-cost nuclear myth. Well, this is the easiest thing to do. And every time I see this picture, I want to punch a nuclear scientist in the head. It's such a despicable fake picture. Nobody's coming out of Reactor 4. Nobody. And going in with a paper suit on is you're not coming back out. If you're walking this way, you were never that way. There's nowhere there to go. That's a lethal dose. All those cranes are remote control, for God's sakes. All right, I kind of made up for last night's shitty show. And tonight I basically just wanted to talk about something else besides tanks. We've been covering the tanks for 5 years, right? Should Japan dump the 1,000 tanks in mine shafts and boreholes and the 30 million one-ton bags? Well, yeah, they should. That's a wonderful idea, right? I think it's a wonderful idea. Don't you think it's a wonderful idea? Come on, just a little bit. So the transfer case, we got a 30-day money-back guarantee on that thing anyway, right? But the transfer case, they never gave me the motor for switching the gears. mine doesn't fit on. Well, it fits on, but it's not proper. And I don't know what's going on anyway. We got it installed, but it's like the park is perfect, the neutral is perfect, but in drive it's in super low gear. And 1, 2, and 3 don't change anything. They're all just stuck in one gear. So the transmission, we got to take the shafts off, I figure, and just put it in a neutral or something, and then put the shafts back on it. But there's a way to go neutral on that, and then recalibrate it, reset the gears. Right, so you're gonna put not the transmission, but the differential in gear. But what we're gonna do is contact where we got it and see if they got the transfer the solenoid that switches gears, the electrical solenoid, and go in and pick that up and put that on and see if that resolves it, because that could have been in neutral when they took it off and stored it at the junkyard. And that's, and my vehicle won't recognize it. And another thing is, worst case scenario, we'll tow it up to the garage and get them to align it properly. But the thought is that the original drive mechanism or gear mechanism, which is just electrical, and it's just like a dial on your stove kind of scenario, except it's electrical. We need the original one. Not mine doesn't fit on it properly. And if not, we'll bring it up to the garage and they can figure it out. And I got a 30-day refund policy on it, right? So I can always take it off and put my old one back on, as bad as that sounds, and come up with another solution without losing the investment, right? I'm heartbroken. I'm just literally heartbroken. And I just spent $400 getting it installed, and we don't have the transfer motor. Mine doesn't fit. So maybe that'll resolve it tomorrow. There's another way to put it in neutral, the transfer case, and then reprogram the transfer case for four-wheel high, because it's generally in four-wheel high. It's a disaster anyways. But I got to deal with it. There's not much I can do about it. I got to come up with solutions and try to come up with some solutions anyway. Okay, so let's close the poll down. We got spammed silly tonight. Look at that. The pro-nuclear scumbag out there with all the ghost accounts hit us hard again tonight, and then 2 days ago. That's the only examples we have in a decade of this happening to us. Have a great night, a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody Sunday, hopefully. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you, Colette. Colette donated last week. We appreciate that, Colette. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Hugs, everybody. Have a great weekend. And there was someone who insulted Kevin on not the last show, but the show before. I blocked him, Kevin. My apologies. I should have blocked that piece of shit a week before, and I didn't. Anyway, that won't happen again, my friend. You have a great night. Hugs for everybody, and we'll see everybody on the other side. And if you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. You got to counter all the spam we got tonight already. I got to rush to town tomorrow. We still got to deal with the truck all week. And it's okay, Melissa. Don't worry about it. Have a great night, folks. We'll see everybody on the other side. Yeah, good night, everybody.